Welcome watching this video. I'm Alan. Today, I would like to introduce tax-deductible expenses for Hong Kong company. Expenses that are incurred for producing profits chargeable to Hong Kong profits tax and they are not capital in nature are generally tax-deductible. In addition, special tax allowance are available for certain capital expenditures. On the other hand, there were special rules for deduction of certain expenses. Accounting treatments are usually followed in tax computation to determine the assessable profits, except where there is an explicit rule in the Inland Revenue Ordinance. Accrued expenses recognized in the profit and losses accounts in accordance with accounting principles are usually deductible if they are incurred for producing profits chargeable to Hong Kong profits tax and are not capital in nature. Expenses items for which a tax adjustment is necessary in determining the amount of taxable profits from the accounting profits include tax depreciation allowance against accounting depreciation, expenses that are capital in nature, general provisions that are not deductible, and non-deductible interest expenses on borrowings used to finance non-income producing assets. Let's take a look of Hong Kong profit tax treatment of some common expenses items. Accounting depreciation is not allowed for tax purpose. Instead, tax depreciation allowance are available for capital expenditure incurred on the construction of buildings or structures and in the provision of machinery and plant for trade or business purpose. For industrial buildings and structures, an initial allowance of 20% in addition to an annual allowance of 4% of the cost of construction or cost of purchase from a developer is granted for an industrial building or structure occupied for the purpose of qualifying trade. For other buildings and structures, that is, commercial building and structures, an annual allowance of 4% of the capital expenditure incurred on the construction is applicable. Regarding to the plant and machinery, an initial allowance of 60% of the capital expenditure on plant and machinery is given for the year of assessment during the basis period in which the expenditure is incurred. An annual allowance is also given for the depreciation at free prescribed rates on the reducing value of each of the free depreciation rate pools. The free prescribed rates are 10%, 20%, and 30%. And the reducing value of each of free depreciation rate pools is original cost less initial and annual allowances and sales proceeds. Bad debts. In general, a bad or doubtful tax incurred in any trade, business, or professions proved to the satisfaction of the Inland Revenue Department to have become bad during the basis period for a year of assessment is deductible. The deduction is limited to the debts that were incurred as a trading receipt in ascertaining the taxpayer's assessable profits. If any bad or doubtful tax that has previously been allowed as a deduction is recovered, it will be treated as taxable profits of the basis period in which it is recovered. Charitable donations. A deduction is allowed for cash donation to approved charities made in the basis period for a year of assessment if the aggregate of such donation is not less than 100 Hong Kong dollars. The deduction is limited to 35% of the assessable profits for the year of assessment. In other words, no deduction is allowed if the company was loss-making in that year of assessment and the deduction cannot be carried forward. Penalties. Fines and penalties are generally not deductible. Taxes. Taxes paid on profits are generally not deductible for the purpose of calculating assessable profits. A foreign tax that is not calculated by reference to profits, for example, VAT, may be considered as deductible under the general deduction provision. Losses. Operating losses incurred in accounting year can be carried forward indefinitely to offset future profits of business. However, operating losses cannot be carried backward. Besides, capital losses are not tax deductible. This is the end of this video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.